Excellent. Welcome to Coach's Corner, guys. Hello from scenic Grand Prairie. Great to have everybody on the call today. Awesome to see Brett Cox. I haven't seen your face for probably 18 years. This is the coach that knocked us out 4 straight in the second round in 2000. Heck of a coach. Looking forward to having you share in the future too, Brett. But guys, we have 2 world-class humans sharing with us this evening. And again, same format. We're going to open it up for some Q&A. So, while Del Pedrick's sharing, please take notes. If you have some questions that jump into your mind, write them down, and then let's open it up at the end of the call for Q&A. And then we also have Daryl Baxendall sharing about the NCAA and some things that he's learned over numerous years of research. His son, Brendan Baxendall, another world-class young man, had a chance to play for UMass for 4 years. But before we get after it, Barrett Kropp with TWU, head coach, men's hockey team. If you could just open in prayer real quick, and then let's start learning as Del Pedrick has a chance to share with us.
Right on. Thanks, Brewster. Lord, thank you for the day. I thank you for this group of men and for the influence that they have in the game of hockey and in their lives. And I just pray that you would strengthen them, embolden them, give them lots of courage for these times. And Lord, thank you for letting us learn tonight in your name. Amen.
Amen. Guys, again, thanks for making time to be a part of this Coach's Corner. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll get Don Cherry on here telling us some stories and enlightening us more about the game of hockey. Our first guest coach is Coach Del Pedrick. I had a chance to first meet him years ago when he was the head coach at Notre Dame. Growth mindset, life learner. Really excited, Del, to listen to you share this evening. I believe you're in Regina, Saskatchewan. Del's had a chance to be in a number of arenas with a number of ages. He's developed winners on and off the ice, not just individuals, but teams in Canada, and now has had a chance to be overseas in Romania as a skills coach. So, Del, I'm going to be quiet. The mic's all yours, and we're all ears.
Great. Thanks, John. Hi, guys. Great to be here. Really enjoyed the last couple of weeks. I really appreciate the invitation to listen to some quality coaches and some presentations and sharing of ideas. So it's great to be here. I'll see if I can just share my screen, and I'm going to talk a little bit about skill development. So John talked about taking notes. That's great. Once you guys are done the notes, can you send them back to me, and I can maybe learn something from them too. So that would be great. And with that being said, I'm going to throw some ideas at you. Well, I can't share here, John. Maybe if you can enable me to share my screen. I'm also going to try and draw some ideas out of you that will help me in the future and going forward as well. Welcome, crazy times. We all know that. But what's kind of really neat and cool about the times right now is it's a time of change. And that's what I find coaching's all about is if you wait for the change to happen, you're probably a day late or even longer. So for those of us getting ready for next year, change is going to happen. You never know what's going to happen. It's exciting as a coach because you got to be able to change on the fly. For those of us looking for jobs or wondering what we're going to do next year, it's similar. We have to change our game constantly. So it's always dynamic, always changing. Let's see if I can share this with you here.
Did I click the right button there, Del?
I think so.
Okay.
There, I think you should be able to see my screen now, guys. Is that okay?
Yeah, that looks good, Del.
Okay. Skill development, fun topic, and lots of different experiences. I'm going to share some of mine from coaching in both Canada, the U.S., and a little bit overseas. And as I said, get ready. You're going to leave tonight with a little bit lighter brain because I'm going to steal some ideas, or I'm hoping to, from you guys. The exciting thing for me about skill development is I'm a coach believer. I'm a coach advocate. I think coaching makes a difference. And I really believe this is one area we make make a difference in our teams is in skill development. I think everybody can improve, and as coaches, we can impact all players. It's fun times. Obviously, when we talk about skill development, we all know the technical skills that we want to focus on. I think what's interesting for me here is as you're doing technical skill development, I also threw tactics in there. And to some degree, at times, we're developing intangibles within our players as we approach skill development. I think it's an opportunity for us as coaches to basically enhance the God-given talent. That's the number one thing for players is what the good Lord has given them for a package to work with. And as we attack and approach skill development with our players, we're able to enhance that. Talent is basically a limited resource. You're either really talented in some areas and not so talented in other areas. Whereas skill work, it's unlimited. You can do as much as you're motivated to do. When I look at developing skills, I look at it as a continuum, and the top continuum or flow chart is from basic motor skills or sports skill acquisition. And it's where a skill goes from a cognitive level where you have to think fully about what you're doing all the time. So for the little player on the left, one of our little U8s in Romania there, most of the skills that he saw every day was at the cognitive level. Little 4-year-old, and he's figuring out how to stand on millimeter wide blades. Everything he does, he has to think about. Our job as coaches is to move it along the continuum. I've added something to this continuum, actually. It's basically a 3-step continuum from cognitive to right through to automatic or autonomous. I've added the adaptive stage, and the reason I did that is I think some players have a different level. And every now and then you come across these very unique individuals that are highly adaptive. And it's tough to get there. So I think what I have to remind myself as a coach is we always have to go back and go, sometimes we got to take the best skilled player and move them back to a lower level. Sometimes we assume our players, because they're 21, 22, 26 years of age, that they're at an advanced stage. Sometimes you got to break it down and take them down to a lower intermediate level. But a quick story about an adaptive level of skill. I have a daughter who's a gymnast, and I never thought much of her ability was anything extraordinary. And like anything else, you have feedback from people and oh, this person does this really well, or that sort of thing. And what really struck me one day in Regina here, she's working out at her gym, and she makes a comment to me after her practice, as I watched her practice, about one of the skills she was doing. It happened to be a vault skill. And that's where I kind of realized that, wow, there's a special skill there. What it was, on the vault, you basically hit a jump board, you're vaulting into the air. And she talked about making the decision as she was doing a twist and a flip and everything else in the air, and making a little bit of a correction at that time. And I kind of went, wow, that's a little bit more than automatic. Going up and over a hurdle for me would be automatic. For her, it was up and over this table and that. And I think the special players in the game have that, where they can take an automatic skill, shoot off the wrong foot, push it around a skate, and thread a pass over top, underneath, and into spaces where you didn't think was possible. So, and at the end of the day, how can we move our players along? I think it's important to make sure it's individualized and that we can go backwards sometimes a couple steps to help our players move forward. Jump in anytime if anybody has any questions or comments or experiences to share. I certainly would welcome that. Considerations. What do we have to think about when we're approaching skill development? Age and experience, obviously, is one. Body type composition. Typically, considerations for coaches, they talk about gender. And I kind of took the gender out of here because I think the gender differences we see in long-term development models is we know that girls in their early teens, are farther advanced than the boys. So that's why we have to look at body type and the composition when we're looking at skill acquisition and what we're doing with the players, and keeping that in mind. A great example is the fastest skaters. We all play with guys that could just get up and down the ice like nobody's business. Well, to be able to do that, you need a certain fiber twitch, and not all of us have that. So that's why we have our different players. We have the guys that just have outright speed, the Matt Barzals of the world that can just get up and down the ice quicker than anybody. And then you also have the guys that play the heavy plotting game, the Lowrys of the world that can stick their nose in and muck it up and that sort of thing. And the next piece of consideration is what I call, aptitudes or attitudes. The aptitudes, like I said, along with your body type, some of us just have a knack for doing things. Some guys just score goals. It's on their tape, it's in the net, and you kind of go, well, I'm not sure how he did that. Some guys just have that aptitude. And then also the physical skills break down into how some you can certainly improve, some are limited. Our physical skills like strength, all of our health-related fitness skills are unlimited in terms of how much you can develop those. But it also ties into your body type and your body composition. So muscle strength, muscular endurance, flexibility. Sometimes you're trying to make the perfect stride with a player, a young player, and it may not be possible. Hip mobility and skeletal structure sometimes influences that. So we have to be aware of that. And the other piece, the physical skills, comes in the skill-related areas of fitness: agility, balance, coordination, speed, reaction time, all those things. And then finally, a big part, I probably should have highlighted this for me, is the mental skill piece. One of the most important mental skills that I've found in players is the ability and the awareness on the ice, and their ability to assess a situation on the goal that's constantly changing. Kind of ties into that adaptive stage of skill development I talked about before. Skills have changed over time, and it was kind of neat, as Barrett can attest to, or anybody that's been into Eastern Europe. They're a little bit, they're still very much in the Russian influence and the Eastern Bloc influence of the way they do things. Everything is highly coach-centered. Their skill environment and their skill development is predominantly closed skill environment. Coach-centered, you have simple imitations of skills. And this works really well for simple skills and kids for young ages, where kids are like little tape recorders. What they see is exactly what they do. So this works well for the simple skills and at certain times. Other times you're going to be dealing with players. I can use myself, for example. I'm not a great shooter. So for me to try and take university age or a young pro guy at 22 and show him how to shoot how I just can't do that. So we have to be able to find the right people to help us in those areas. And then the more complex skills, where we've all done this before, the shaping or chaining, that simply refers to the whole part whole, where we break things down or we work things backwards. We start with a full skill, and then we'll work our way back and break it down into small change or simple steps. Where the skill development has really gone is player-centered and more into the open environment. And what I like about the player-centered model is the ownership that's placed on a player. We really like to work with our players. It gives us great satisfaction. I think it's important to spend time with your players in skill development. This is where you really get to know your players, where their breaking points are, how much you can lean on a player, or how much you can rely on them to solve some of the problems. We're going to talk about that a little later as one of the most important skills. But exploration and challenge is one of the best ways to develop skills. We're all competitive people. It probably doesn't matter whether we're playing crib against each other or we're playing post at the end of a practice. We're all in it to win, and we always challenge ourselves. So I think that's a key piece. And then the use of small area games This really encompasses an open, skilled environment. What open means is it's constantly changing. They have to assess the situation, and they have to make a decision and apply that skill. And the best way to accomplish that I have found over experience is through the small area games. Questions or comments so far? Just a couple more slides and then we'll open up the discussion. Player-centered development, a key piece. Now, it used to be us grabbing players. Okay, I want Barrett, John, and Mike. You're coming with me. We're going to work on one-timers, or we're going to try and work on redirections, those types of things. Now we're finding with the young players that they're really in tune. They've got so much information, so much resource at their fingertips, as do we as coaches. It's more player initiated, and I think it's better now. I think when the player initiates the skill development, they take a little more ownership. And it's the old adage of give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, you teach him how to fish, he can fish for a lifetime. And that's the same with skill development. And the guys that are special players we all worked with, they are driven and they want to find the best ways. It's got to be also interactive. And what we talk about interactive, and I put coaches and players there. We can be the guide for our players in skill development, but there's also something to be said about what players learn from other players. And you hear this all the time about the veterans in a league take the young guys under their wing and show them the ropes, give them little tips. Players are really great teachers and great coaches. Interaction can be used through video, basically taking your phone on the ice to do that. You can show them examples of the skills you're trying to accomplish, and then give them feedback from video as well. They can watch themselves. If you're working on weight transfer and shots or square shoulders, video is the best information they can get. Or log or journals. What's going on? A simple log can be simply what they can hit, how many passes on their forehand, backhand, or what's their shot velocity, what's their release time, those things. And I put in skill tests there, something that we've developed over time. We started at Notre Dame probably about 10 years ago, maybe even more, where we started just little skill tests. And what it was giving us was just a simple baseline. And it also shows some areas of needs for our players. For example, we carried it through, we started to work with the youth players right up to pro guys in Romania to give them a baseline. We found some of their stick skills were way below their age range. So those skills give us a base, and then it's also immediate feedback for the players. If you have a well-designed test and you're working on backhand shooting accuracy, they get immediate feedback, and then their competitiveness kicks in. If I'm shooting against another guy, boy, I want to make sure that I'm a little bit better than Chaba in my backhand skills. If not, I'm trying to beat him the next day. And then the piece of peer coaching. Just we alluded to that before, of the effective use of players in helping you with skill development or pushing each other. Experience, probably the best teacher I have had. What in a nutshell has my time in Manitoba, in Saskatchewan, in Cleveland, Ohio, in Romania, or coaching, being able to coach in Scandinavia, in Denmark, in Norway, Finland, into Switzerland, Czech Republic, and also Slovakia. Well, number one, I think our job, when we talk about skill development, is to ignite the passion. If we can somehow find a way to initiate the players, or have the players initiate their skill development, that's half our job. Excite the players, make it fun, and everything we do. Little competitions, creating that growth environment we always talk about. And it's kind of been tough for some of us coaches that have been around for a little while, in that we've had to change our ways. We grew up and started our coaching with a lot of direction, dictating, here, do this, do that, a lot of imitation and that sort of thing. Now it's more of a facilitate. So igniting passion becomes huge. If you've got a passionate player that wants to be the best, they're a lot of fun to be around. It's a lot of fun to show up the rink. Next point I've learned is to be open. Discard old school thinking. Turn the page. Eliminating hard, fast rules. Rewarding skill. Not very often there are old school coaches reward skill. Chip it in, chip it out, chip it in, dump it out, dump it in, rim it, high on the glass, do whatever. No skill whatsoever. I think the game right now, as I call the presentation, skill or be skilled, it's an exciting game right now. There's a lot of skill all over the place. We got defensemen banging home rebounds in the opposition's crease, and it might have been a pass from the other defenseman down close to the goal line. It's almost positionless hockey. So the way that coaching is going now is you got to reward skill and recognize it. And if you want to get better, allowing players to make mistakes by trying to make skilled plays rather than making safe plays. Something else I've learned over time is the importance of execution versus focusing on how to do a skill. Sometimes a player, for their size, shape, or skill ability, will figure out what they have to do. And that's the FIO factor I talk about. It's huge in letting players figure it out. As coaches, we take a lot of pride in showing and directing our players, here's how you do it. When a player truly becomes good is when they start to figure it out, because then the skill becomes more automatic that much quicker, and it's adaptable as well. We talked about closed and open environments. Something else that's really changing in that is making decisions while they're doing the skills. And it's still a work in progress where I spent the last 4 years in that their whole culture is not based on free decision making. They've been used to being told what to do, how to do it, how long to do it, and whatnot, and don't ask why. Sit down, shut up, take in the information, and just replicate it. So decision making is a huge part. It's one thing to get your players to be able to do a quick release wrist shot, but it's also more important that they're able to know when to utilize the skill. And the use of small area games. Just small space, they have to make decisions constantly, and it's game-like. The best training background is game-like competition, activity, challenge. Challenging. Again, I probably left it off the skill list. One of the intangibles, I think, is the compete factor. Once you get that, if you have a self-initiated player and they're competitive, skill development becomes a lot easier because they're going to drive it. It's that internal motivation that pushes them. They want to get better. Well, they got 8 out of 10 on the backhand test. Well, they're going to push it till they get 10 out of 10. Then they're going to push it. They can do that skill on the move. Then they're going to try that skill on the move against resistance. So most important skill, in my mind, is that compete and continue to challenge your players. When and how, just a quick story. I think any time is a good time to develop skills. Go back a few years and I'm not a big summer hockey believer. And somehow, some way, we ended up in a summer hockey center. And I just happened to be watching in the stands. And this particular team had 3 lines. They had 10 or 11 forwards, and they were doing breakouts. So they were running breakouts. They throw the puck in one end. First line would break out. They go into attack. They throw it in, then the second line would run. Then the third line would run. Then the fourth line would run. And then they'd run back to the first line. So the 10th forward had been sitting around for 4 repetitions. So as I watched the 10th forward, by about the 5th repetition, so that'd be the second line, second time around, that player started to pick up a puck and started to handle it, flip it against the wall. A lot of coaches, right, and as the coach, and maybe I would have done the same situation, got after the kid. What are you doing? Smarten up. Pay attention. Watch. Well, my opinion, all the time's a great time to work on the skills. I give the kid credit. A poor coaching habit meant that the kid was standing there for upward of 6 repetitions. He might as well do something and get out of that time. So when to do it, before practice is a great time. Get your kids on, and as they come on, you'll find your keen ones right away. The guys that are there first, they want the most help. So you'll spend time with them, and they just eat it up. In my experience, it hasn't mattered where I've been in the world. They like that extra time. After practice, same thing important. The key piece there is why at either time? Well, you got to be able to do the skills when you're tired. So that's a key piece as well. And then during the practice as well, as I alluded to, being open. And I understand, coaches, we need control of our practice. Nothing worse than you're trying to run a drill and you're running maybe a transition drill and someone's firing pucks from the half wall into the top corner and the goalie's trying to concentrate in the drill. You can't have that. You have to have some sort of balance. But anytime, anywhere is a good place. And then the piece here on how you do it is resources. My last 2 roles at Notre Dame as well as in Romania, we built skills centers, beautiful multi-million-dollar facilities where kids can develop some skills off ice. But for me, the key piece is developing the habit of wherever you can do it. A fancy facility or a high-end resource doesn't make you a better player. Some of the best shooters I've come across in a game, piece of plywood in the backyard, and they dented the heck out of the garage door or the basement walls like we've all done before. So just wherever you can do it, utilize the resources. Throw it open. Discussion, questions. What are some guys' experiences that they can throw my way?
Dale, awesome presentation. Really appreciated the time you put in preparation and you sharing. How can everyone on this call learn from you around the topic of how much overload we should have in a practice? So, say for an example, the goalie's used to seeing, a shot off a transition, resets, the goalie's got a little bit of downtime. Are you trying more and more in your practices, to keep your goalie that much more alert where he has to think much more in a practice than in a game? And then same thing with your players. Could you give an example, how you're integrating a tight turn or something that's a high-end skill movement, but the player has to almost think more in the practice than he might be thinking during the game?
Yeah, I think the goaltending, great question, John. I think the goaltending piece is so important. So often we as coaches, we get worried about the flow of our drills and making sure we're going down and back and we're doing this and that. And the old adage is, okay, goalie, you're there to stop the puck. You're at the end of the drill. That's what you're there for. So I sometimes get in the way of other coaches when the goalies, and I see that. I'll jump in, and if it is a transition drill, maybe once the goalie's made a play on the puck and they're breaking out of their end, maybe it's a low goal line attack from the goalie. Or utilizing players at that same time. So they recognize there's a chance for quick skill development or adding to your drills. As the transition's going back up ice on a breakout, well, why not add a shot or, like I said, a low angle attack? So again, engaging the goalie and then having that awareness as well. Teaching the goalie, all right, it's our time to work on your little skill right now within the drill. Checking up ice, keeping that awareness. All right, the drill's coming back. They're going to dump the puck back in or they're going to attack on me and I've got to make the save. And the second part, John, what was the second part to your question with the forwards?
Yeah, second part of how the player may be forced or challenged. I hate the word forced, but challenged to have to maybe do something in that drill that, typically he wouldn't be, doing in a game. But you're challenging that person to, whether it's something vocally or it's a movement to where, you may have cones set up in a certain way, but it's something where, normally in a game he wouldn't do that, but you're challenging the player or challenging that line skill set to think more, to hopefully prepare them in a game to be that much more automatic.
For sure. Adding simple cues to to drills depending on age, and then they have to react to those cues. For example, if it's a tight D gap, maybe there's a chance for an overload on a small ice 2-on-1 soft chip skating in behind, on those types of things. If your focus coming into this week is playing a team that back checks really, really hard right to the net front, maybe you're adding, after you're doing an attacking drill, they're recovering the puck, they're throwing it high to the point man, so they get a point shot. So you're engaging the thought process of your preparation. Oh, we're playing TWU next week. They really back check hard. They track back hard. They come right to the net. They make you earn the tough ice. So right away, you're all right. We're going to attack. We want to attack with speed. You can't be slow because Trinity's going to turn the puck over and go back the other way on you. And then you're also adding that piece of, once you've finished the attack, puck retrieval, and then change the point of attack. Get it up top, pull them out of that box to create more space.
Right on.
Dell, thanks for your presentation. Question for you.
Sure.
In the process of, you talked about the adaptive stage or having a figure it out mentality. Anything that you've picked up in helping an athlete, like the concept of learning to learn, like helping facilitate that mentality where the athlete is figuring it out at a high level? Any things that you've found in your experience that have helped create that mentality and that ability to kind of figure it out and learn well on their own?
Mm-hmm. Paul, one thing that is I've had to really work on as a coach, because I've grew up in the directive form. A lot of my mentors had some great mentors that knew the game and had a tremendous impact on me, but it was all about directing and whatnot. So it's something that I've really had to focus on is asking more questions. Instead of, it's so much quicker. And those of you that know me, maybe Barry will smile, I'm not a really overly patient guy. And I know Michael get a chuckle over that, because you have expectations as a coach. You want things done a certain way. And to expedite the process, Paul, it's a lot quicker just to tell you, okay, Paul, let's do this. Let's cut the chase and stop chasing our tails and wasting time. So it takes a lot for me sometimes, and sometimes it's an extra stick of gum in my mouth so I can chew more than I talk. To take a minute, think, and ask a question. And then try and draw that out of the player. And the more you do that, the more they start to have the ownership. And then the other piece I've picked up on is regular meetings with the players. Is meet with them, and I think it was alluded to one of the presentations, John. I don't remember the one, but I talked about regular meetings, segments, short segments, and sitting down with your players. But then as you sit down with the players, looking at performance review and different things like that, but turning it around again, less talk from coach, and I'd be trying to draw more out from Paul. Okay, Paul, what have you seen here? And you can still get to that same endpoint. If I want you to get to a point that I think would help our team, I have to try and get you to come to that same point by asking the right questions, showing you the right video clip, maybe doing the right drills with you. Did that help, Paul? Did I run around that question? Okay.
Question, Del. I would say last year or two, there's been maybe a bit of a redemption in terms of coaches in North America, in terms of character matters and those type of things. So in Europe, there's a few more pages that have to get turned in that book. From your time in Romania, and you've been able to sort of influence at the grassroots, are you seeing change, at least in Romania, under your influence, or is it still we're still years away from that happening across the globe?
Yeah. In what we saw for sure when I first arrived, we had coaches hitting kids over the head with their hockey stick,
Yeah.
and not even batting an eye. And so trying to change that, yeah, it's a tough and slow change, Barrett, and there's a lot of work. It made me snicker there a little bit. That I have a couple of video clips on my phone on coaches or even just society in general, where it's very abrasive, very authoritarian, still in that environment. So they have a long way to go. We were making strides in some areas, but in some respects, after 4 years, I sat back and looked at it and went, wow, I'm not sure in the area I was in. And I think you probably experienced this in Czech as well, is a breath of fresh air that they're still very family oriented. Traditions are hugely important. The church is a big part of everything they do. It's all integrated. At the same breath, they're still not open to changing their ways, is what I have found. They want to do better. They want the results, but they still haven't figured out that they've got to change their motivation and the way they're getting kids to think. It's still very much, you skate how hard I say, you skate where I say, and how I say, and when I say.
Yeah, it's interesting. Thanks. I figured that was the case, but I just figured maybe there was a new wave of coaches coming out of Romania.
Really, some young ones. I got some really positive vibes out of some young ones, and I think hopefully they'll get the opportunity in 10 years to do that. I just find the whole society in general there is not going to move real forward, for very quickly forward, because they're in a reliant state. I called it the communist hangover when I was there. The government has done everything for them for so long. There's so many people, they don't consider themselves communists, but they just kind of sit and wait. I think it's very similar maybe to social assistance or those types of things.
Yeah.
Why go out and do something when someone else is just going to bail me out?
Yeah, really appreciate you making time to share with us. I look forward to watching this call a couple times and just being able to think a little bit more of what all you shared. Looking forward to future conversations, and I hope there's time, guys, after Mr. Baxendall shares, where I'm sure everyone has a couple more questions for Dell. Our next guest coach is Daryl Baxendall. He currently lives in Calgary, Alberta, and I was lucky to be able to meet him, I think, 8 years ago. And I count Daryl Baxendall as one of my mentors. And he is happily married. He's got some world-class kids. And the last number of years, he's had a chance to do a lot of research on the NCAA, specifically to hockey. So I'm just going to be quiet. Daryl, the mic is all yours, and we look forward to listening to you.
Thanks, John. If you want to, do I need to do anything with the screen, or how's that work? Just share screen?
Yeah, it's open.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Thanks for this opportunity, John. Yeah, as John said, met John about 8 years ago through my son. My son played in the Alberta Junior Hockey League and eventually got a scholarship to the University of Massachusetts. And along that whole journey, you know, what I'm going to talk about here, it might really excite you or it might really bore you, but I want to Al mentioned it, his whole conversation was about skill development. And one of the things that we don't develop is, what do I do with this skill and who is helping me along the way to make my next journey, whether it's playing junior hockey, whether it's playing college hockey, and trying to understand that a little bit better. So I'm going to go through a couple things with you. And like I said, stop me along the way if it doesn't make sense. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, here we go. Okay, so one of the things is, you know what, when we're playing junior hockey or wanting to play junior hockey, you know, having that knowledge is having the, you know, is having the right answers, but intelligence is asking the right questions. And I look at parents all along my son's journey, parents that I talk to today, and they're still asking the same questions that we asked 30 years ago. So one of the things here that, you know, I was talking about was everyone talks about a hope mentality. You know, I hope I make the team. I hope scouts are watching me. I hope my coach is promoting me. And what I'm trying to do, and working with John actually, is how do we invest in what that future looks like for that hockey player, or it could be a volleyball player, it could be a basketball player, it doesn't really matter. But they're doing all the skills training. They are trying, you know, my friends are doing it, I need to do it. I'm trying to become a better hockey player. But how do I take that and actually find out, is there any opportunities even to play along the down the road? So trying to get rid of that hope mentality is what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. So one of the things I'm going to show you here is I've created a program here that talks about, so parents, players from all the way up from Bantam age, all the way up to junior age, can understand what it takes to what their future in hockey actually holds. So, you know, kids talk about, oh, I want to play in the NCAA. I want a full ride. Well, what they don't know is there actually any opportunities to play at that level of hockey? Where are those opportunities? And do my coaches even know any of the coaches playing NCAA or coaching NCAA? But getting that into parents at an early age, at that Bantam age, so they understand, well, if I go play in the WHL, what does that really mean? If I go play in the Alberta Junior Hockey League, what does that mean? And so I've created this program that looks at, I don't know, I'm looking at Canadian university tuition costs. I'm looking at NCAA tuition and scholarship costs, comparing that year by year. Is there actually any opportunities? I look at commitments to these universities. I look at the Canadian Junior Hockey League, at all the leagues, all the teams, the United States Hockey League, you know, the USHL, the NAHL. And so I'm looking at all this information to say, what is actually going on out there? So one of the things that when you take a look at it is, I want to start here, is if I was to play, can everyone, I don't have my screen on with all the people on, but can you actually see this screen?
No.
You can't see the screen? Okay, let me go here. Share screen. You can see that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm going to go to one other one first, and then I'll come back to this one. You can see this screen now too?
No, within Zoom, you gotta exit out of the one screen to be able to
Stop share, and then okay, and then we'll go back. Okay, try this.
And then you'll have to share it a second.
Yeah, share it again, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So everyone always talks about that they would like a hockey scholarship to go play NCAA. But just think about this as all hockey, university hockey. And this is just one. I probably have about 40 different spreadsheets that I look at when I'm doing this type of work. But you can see here, as an example, when you talk to look at, there's about 27 players averaging on a hockey team in the U.S. NCAA, and everyone I've talked to, oh, my son received a full scholarship to go down to Boston College or University of Massachusetts. And when you take a look at it, that's not really the case. It just can't. There's only so much money that goes around. I mean, they offer 18 full scholarships to go down for each individual university, and if there's 27 players on a team, those numbers just don't go around. So, right here is an example. If you take a look at the average team scholarships, Boston College 75%, Boston University 66%. 64% for Merrimack. That's just an example. So when you start taking a look at costs at Boston College, the average out of state cost is $46,000 US to go to that college. Sorry, that's the wrong way I put it here. The average scholarship, if you got that 75%, would equate to about $46,000 US. But to go to Boston College, it costs $62,000 US to go to that college. So right there, that's $20,000 US out of your pocket that you have to pay as a parent. If you got an average scholarship to go to that university, which is an $80,000 US bill, and you're thinking, as parents, can we really even afford to send our kid, even if he had a great scholarship, to the US? Not many people think of it that way. They just look at, geez, I really want my kid to have that scholarship and go down there. My son had an average scholarship of about 75% over his 4 years. It cost us, said 60 to 80,000 US for him to go there. But for him, we wouldn't have given up that experience. So it's not all about money. It's about the experience and the life skills and everything you learn there. But what I'm trying to educate people here is, there's great Canadian universities, there's great US universities, but understanding what does it actually cost to go to a university down in the US, even with a scholarship. Okay. Just gonna stop sharing this one. And so one of the things when my son was going, we were looking, share screen here again. This is just all kinds of numbers and red and green and stuff like that. But I'm just going to walk through an example. So when my son was he played 3 years in the Alberta Junior Hockey League, 17 to his 20. And, he had a couple opportunities. But, his second year and his final year, he was asking the coach, like, how come no teams are talking to us? How come there's no opportunities? And what I was able to find was when you start breaking down the data and start looking at it a little closer, one of the things that really, hang on here. Is that still sharing the screen the right way?
Looks good.
So one of the things when you start looking at the information here, I'm going to just look at Boston College as an example. And in 2019 to 20, what I do is I do a 4-year projection of what it looks like for teams. So as an example, when you take a look at down here at Merrimack College, and it says goalies, there's 4 goalies there. Well, if I'm a player and Merrimack approaches me and it says, hey, we're looking for a goalie for next year. Well, what comes out of this is, well, based on what you have with the goaltenders you have and the commitments you have, you already have 4 goaltenders on your squad for the next 2 years at least. How is there opportunities for me even to compete to go to Merrimack when I'm looking at this. And when you take a look at example of Merrimack, and I go across and I look at defensemen here, for 2019, they were already overcommitted by three defensemen. For 2020, overcommitted by 3 defensemen. And even 3 years out, they were overcommitted by an additional defenseman. So when a junior coach says, well, I phoned my contacts, they just don't have any openings. When you start to look at this type of data, you start to see that even 3 years out, teams are so committed to players already that there's only so many places available. And when you start to take a look at all the teams, they overcommit by, as an example here, 22%, 14%, 55%. Probably 80% of the teams are overcommitted on players. And that's why it's difficult to understand, if I'm a player, who do I even contact? Who would I even want to, are there positions available? And so if I'm planning when I'm if I'm planning when I'm 20 or 21 years playing junior hockey, and I'm looking for a scholarship, it's pretty hard when there's, in December, January, that all the positions are filled up already. And so you really need to start planning when you're at midget age, going into juniors, of 3 to 4 years out. What does that future hold for me? And how do I invest in this? We'll invest, $300 for a hockey stick. That's no problem paying that. I looked at I just looked on the website, Elite Power Skating, 30 hours for $1,800. We're paying people skills camps all the time. Well, how do we start to look at, how do we invest as a parent, as a player, on investing in myself and looking at the future, what that looks scholarships. And this just breaks this down into, say, we all know that Brooks has been placing players for years, but what other teams are placing players? And as example here, Okotoks and Camrose, well, maybe I should be sending my kid to those camps. Might be harder to make the team, but they seem like they have more connections. And then I break it down even further, and I start to take a look at commitments in the Alberta Junior Hockey League. I take a look here at St. Cloud State University, where they have 2 kids here. I look at Colgate, I look at Clarkson, and I start to say, well, if I'm planning my future out, maybe those are universities that I should target because they are coming to Alberta to watch. People say, I want to play in Minnesota. Well, Minnesota they don't take any Canadian kids. They're going to commit just to their U.S. kids. And then I take a look at, same thing, which leagues within the NCAA are actually is just a league. So this is just all stats and just all numbers. But what it was, really what I want to take this down, when a kid's sitting on the bench and says, how come there's, coach, how do we get more interest in what I'm doing? And I know there's a number of coaches here that, Barrett, I think you're coaching university hockey and you're recruiting kids. Well, this is a tool that you can start to say, what does it cost? If you're interested in going to the U.S., here's what it's going to cost you to go down there. Here's the opportunities that we are presenting. Here's the education that we are presenting. I also take a look at, down in the U.S., the schools that are offering scholarships. Well, if they're number 1,500 on a list of 2,000 universities in the U.S., is that really a place that I want to send my son for 4 years or to get an education? He comes back and he can't even use his degree. So it's looking at what the opportunities, is there opportunities for a kid even to go to a school? What would it cost to go to that school? The quality of the education, and also taking a look at the leagues across Canada and the US of what leagues, if I'm trying to plan out my future, where should I be looking at as those types of opportunities. So I had lots more graphs, but I thought that's just what I wanted to share with you of some of the things that I've been working on.
It's a great information that that you've got there, Daryl. It's so true, and I know that Brad and Jamie probably can speak to it too. Like it's unbelievable how uneducated parents are, and how the kids are. Like they I'm getting emails now. It's June, and I'm getting emails. Hey, coach, I'm so and so. And just finished junior, and I'm wondering if you got any spots open. Like, well, if you're 16 years old, I'll think about you in my class from 4 years from now. But like, we're stuffed full, right? Like, it's unbelievable how poorly educated with all the information that's out there. So I guess my question would be for you, Daryl, is it's great information. What's sort of your end game with the data you've collected? Is it something that that made available? Is it like
this is what I've talked to John quite a bit about. It's been the struggle. Like I said, I've been working on this for about 3 years, and it's what is the right platform for people to have access to this information. Is it a web subscription? Is it if you give it to everybody, then does it have the value? And I take a look at this and said, even on a team. I'll just take the Drumheller Dragons. That's where my son played. And even if every kid paid $100, so $2,300 for the team, it doesn't sound like anything when you look at what we spend on kids for their skill development. But it seems like when you have something like that, people are like, oh, I don't know what I would do with that information. I'm not exactly how to use it. So this is where John and I talked about, does it have to be one-on-one with parents? Well, if it's one-on-one with parents, then you're only reaching a very small sample size, and that's close to your home base, right? So I'm trying to figure out what is the best way of getting this information in a usable format. One of the things was work in the oil and gas industry, and what if I lost my job? Well, this was something that I looked at as a business opportunity to be able to put out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's from the tech side, there's so many different ways to skin that cat, right? Like there's subscription type based stuff. The problem with that is as soon as one buys it, then he shares it to 10 different.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So there's that difficulty, but it's I don't know how, but I know that every day we're being thrown a new curveball with this crisis that we're in. And it's going to force the game to change. It's going to force sports to change how we do it. And I'm not saying that this is this is the 100-mile-an-hour fastball to solve it all, but I think that's information like this that we can get into hands of parents and players, and it's even applicable, I'm sure, to other sports. Like I'm sure it can be drilled down into basketball and volleyball scholarships and those types of things. Like it's totally somehow it's got to get out there. If anything, just to save the June email and phone call. Hey, coach, do you have a spot for me?
Well,
I would love to. I'd love to have 10 teams that I could stuff kids onto and play, but that's not happening. Like at the end of the day, there's a really limited number of spots, and they need to know that ahead of time. And maybe, I'm banging the drum for Canada. Like 100%, I'd love to go and coach NCAA, but I'm creating that environment here. Like, maybe this is my 30-second commercial for Trinity Western, but I would put our program against the bottom half of the NCAA Division I. Like we're an incredible facility. We treat our athletes like world-class citizens. And we like, yeah, we've been down, and I know that Minnesota and Nordac, and they spend $10 million on the locker room. I can't compete with that. But the bottom end programs, we've got it going on. And I know that that's the same across at a few other schools, like U of S has got a brand new arena. It's Canada University needs to, reinvent itself. And this is maybe some tools that can be incorporated into that.
Yeah, like I said, I built this with, with the intent when I started it was to understand the NCAA. But as I did that, then you start to add the Canadian universities on. And then when you start to add the opportunities, and then you start to add the costs, and then you start to add, can my parents come to watch? All those factors are so critical that people, they just don't think about. And so even though John and myself, I talked about NCAA, it's actually a program that now that has evolved, that it actually educates on the whole system, that's kind of going on. So appreciate your comments.
Yeah, I was going to jump in. I think it's huge with maybe even trying to partner with the local, you have your AAA programs, because I have kids at 15, they still just believe that they're just going to get a full ride scholarship or they're going to get drafted to the NHL. And that's their parents are paying me money to train their goalies, and not their kid. There's no possible way that their kid is ever going to get beat out by somebody else. And I have to sell that dream until the day comes and I have now a 19-year-old goalie that's chatting with 2 universities that don't have open spots. So they're telling him, yeah, we like you, yet I'm telling him you're not going to play. It's just a matter of fact unless somebody gets cut. So I think it's one of those things is now I will coach a U16 elite program where I would be interested as a head coach to partner to pass on information, because I was coaching at Trinity Western with Barrett. It's I played U Sports, CIS back in the day, and anybody here on this call has coached enough hockey to just know the average parent doesn't know the information that you're saying. And they're paying a lot of money now with academies, $30,000, $40,000 a year, starting at 15 years old, for a possibility of not a full ride scholarship. And they've spent all their kids' money at 15, 16, and 17 to not get, say, this quote unquote full scholarship, because they don't understand that it's not going to be a full ride and that there are going to be costs involved in it. So I think there's a little bit of part to it with Barrett of I don't know if getting more coaches involved with trying to help parents. I get that also probably drops our clientele for any other skills coach or any other minor hockey coach. If you tell a 15-year-old kid he won't make it, he's probably not signing up next year. But it's a little bit of you don't want to do a bait and switch to just all of a sudden have somebody 5 years down the line and then there's no spots.
Well, I think, and this, John and I talked about this lots, this wasn't to turn parents off that there are no opportunities, but taking the future in your hands and understanding it, at least you can make some decisions, right? And saying, what does it look like? And you know what, I do have to start when I'm 15, 16, thinking about what this looks like versus 19, 20, 21, and then finding out there's no spots. So yeah, it's more of a tool, and you might, turn some people the wrong way, or even coaches or programs, but it's, hey, if they understand it, then they can start making some better decisions.
There's a good market for this information. It's very valuable, and essentially what you're doing is setting up a section of what most agencies would do, or player representatives or should be doing. As been alluded, people spend a lot of money for no return. Yeah, if I can help along the way, I'd certainly throw some ideas your way, because it's a big void. People make $30,000 decisions based on a 14-year-old's inkling.
Oh,
and
But a speaker?
Yeah.
Speak into it, yeah.
And Daryl, maybe Dale's onto something there, that maybe this is a subscription you sell to player agents and that group. Let them sort of be the brokers of that information and let them disseminate it, because that's the other problem that I have on a regular basis, is how uneducated agents are, and just they have no clue. They're retired from the show and they think that they've got all these contacts and they can get guys, but they don't even know they don't know about Western League money. They don't understand the U.S. loop. They don't know about clearinghouse. Like, it's just some of the most basic stuff they don't know about. And there's some junior A teams that have that information. They have their education consultant, but that's like, it's got to go deeper. And so I think this information may be in the hands that you sell it to the agent, and then let them recoup it through their player fees that way.
Right.
Yeah, guys, I think there's another angle too, where, you know, around those supper table conversations, I think we've all had those conversations to where, you know, the person we're talking to really feels like they're training hard, like they really feel like they're putting everything into it. And I think the same thing is on the knowledge side. There's a lot of parents and even coaches, they actually really believe that they've done their homework, and their opinion of what could be the possible future is the right opinion. But, you know, as we look in business at, you know, quality costs time, and know how many players are playing the game in Canada, you know, how might we use this conversation to where around that supper table conversation, we understand we got to work so much harder, but in that we got to get smarter. And when we want to get smarter, that means we have got to ask better questions. And from the data, it just shows, you know, such good research of where programs have excelled, where those players have come from. You know, typically we always know when the NCAA coaches are coming up. And, you know, for coaching junior right now, how can you be that much more prepared to where you have that relationship built before they come up to your showcase? But then from that, you're able to hopefully, you know, share about your players in the best way to hopefully set them up to have the, you know, the best possible opportunity to that next level, right? You think of a project manager that wants to move up in a company, much is the same with, you know, your junior players or midget players. We want to see people around us excel. And I think some of the work that Daryl's done has just been really, really eye-opening. And, you know, finding the right way to share it could be great for the game, you know, as we want to see the Canadian game continue to improve. But Brett, I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe you could share with us. Brett Cox has developed some very good hockey players. Huddy was one of them many years ago. How do you see what Daryl Baxendale has shared here to where maybe you were at in, say, 2000 talking to NCAA coaches?
Okay, I'm hoping you can hear me.
Yes.
I'm going to turn off. There. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my apologies. I forgot my computer at work in my haste to get home. So if I look and think today, we have more knowledge available to us at the tip of our finger than ever before. In the late 90s, when I was having more success getting, you know, player scholarships, John brought up a certain team that might have beat him. That year we had 19 of 23 players get scholarships of some sort. The easiest way that we were getting our players recruited was the old fax machine and sending video clips. But every Sunday night we would send a fax of all our stats, all our current grades, SATs, to every NCAA school in the States, Division I, Division II. And then all Monday, we answered calls from the scouting, the recruiting coaches from the States. We started to do that with Canada, had a little bit of success, but again, I think budgets were different. I think the CIS and provincial teams have done a much better job now recruiting within Canada. And I would suggest CIS, though, is very much geared to the WHL type player, because so much more emphasis is being placed on their scholarship fund. I think the WHL has done an incredible job in supporting their players, and CIS is crazy not to accept those players because a lot of them are coming in with academic money, scholarship money, and it's just enhanced the CIS program. Now, am I echoing?
A little bit.
Yeah, my apologies. I had to borrow my son's headset here. I'm just going to get off my other computer here. I think it's creating feedback. So, is this better now?
Yes.
Okay, my apologies. But I think a big part of it is you know, you look at Hockey Alberta, for instance, they start at they're down to the Pee Wee prospects now. So they're actually indoctrinating kids in Pee Wee with parents. They have sessions. They're trying to share the knowledge that these parents and kids will need at Pee Wee. They do it again in Bantam. And usually by the time they hit midget, most of the kids aren't in the program anymore because they've kind of exhausted their 3 or 4 years of support from these parents to pay good money to be involved in the different camps. And even though the messaging is the same, and again, they're funded by certain leagues, so they're going to promote certain leagues, I think, a little bit more than others, but the information's all out there. And yet listening to this group tonight, you know, a lot of head nodding as the speakers were both speaking. I do appreciate everything they both shared. The internet provides a lot of other information. I don't know if it's that people want instantaneous answers to their specific questions at the time, and they don't want to do the homework, or they don't pay attention because, again, as one of you suggested, they're going to make the NHL or they're going to get a scholarship. They're only looking at the end. They're not looking at the means to get to the end. And I agree. I think the amount of money spent on skill development camps and hockey schools and all sorts of things, and you know, the academies, I think, have served a great purpose, but they've served a purpose probably for the ones that would have got to the same result in a lot of cases. But it's the supporting students that are paying big bucks to get there, and are finding they're spending gross amounts of money to end up at the same spot, which may not be what the original goal was. I don't know if that helps, but I know just from long time ago to now, the amount of knowledge, the amount of opportunity for kids, video, the use of video. I think Hockey TV, for instance, is, you know, if you're a team recruiting, I don't know why you wouldn't have Hockey TV. It's so cheap to have. And it's providing a service where now maybe you don't have to spend as much time on the road. I think it still comes down to the relationship building is the key piece to any recruitment, is building that relationship and trust, because ultimately that's going to allow people to trust in you to accept a scholarship of any sort or the opportunity to play in the Western League. Because I think the opportunity for kids in general is so much better now than it ever was. But again, it's finding the niche that fits for you. And then as Bax has said tonight, the amount of money you're willing to pay to support it.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. No, that's really good. Yeah, I think your power play was a little better than ours there in the third period. Was it 3-2 every game, 4 straight?
Yeah, they were very close games, as I recall. But the part that stood out for me was the 4-0. I believe you brought that up, so I didn't want to. So
yeah, you took the brooms to us, but you had some very good players, and one of them is a pretty good coach in Lethbridge right now. Guys, can we come back to Dell's conversation? Is there anybody got a question around skill development? I just didn't feel like I gave a lot of time for questions. You know, let's keep the call going for at least another 10 minutes. I know we've hit the 75-minute mark, but does anyone have questions for Del Pedrick?
Del, I'll throw one out. How much practice time do you get in a week? And from that practice time, how much would you say you dedicate to individual skill development as part of that that weekly amount?
Boy, we found, Brett, in Eastern Europe, they have more than enough ice time to develop players. They have, for example, in some of the centers, some of the U12s are on the ice 4 times a week. So they have lots of opportunity. My biggest challenge was trying to pull them back a little bit because the U12s are on 4 times a week. The U10s are going 4 times a week. So you got 9-year-old kids clocking in at about 120 practices in a season. And then they wonder why the time they're 15 years old, they're quitting, they're done, they're unenthused and everything else. So lots of time in the most recent. Our challenge at Notre Dame was getting enough ice time, as Mike Mattern is on the call, knows what that's all about. You got 12 hockey teams, 1 pad of ice was going from 6 in the morning till 10:30 at night. So in terms of percentages, the younger the age group, the higher percentage of individual skill work, station work, and everything else like that. So when we're talking about our U8, U10, our little guys in Romania, we were trying to get our coaches to basically do 80 to 90% of skill work, just little station work, teaching them, letting them learn, letting them explore. And then as they get older, start to slowly introduce some tactics, some individual tactics, but minimal tactics until they're older. When we got into the U16 age groups, U18, where they were traveling internationally and getting into Hungary and different places to play, we were able to add some more team information. But again, our biggest challenge in Eastern Europe was opposite what we found at Notre Dame, is trying to tame the ice times down. Notre Dame, we were trying to get creative on getting two teams on the ice at the same time to increase the ice.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And just to comment, Darren, the idea of what platform to use. I know at the midget AAA level, that's what I've been working with Ty Ballon here the last couple of years. I think that would be a valuable budget item that we would consider when a team is down in the Calgary area. When you're on the road, you're always looking for quality time spent while you're on the road. But again, I think our parents would really want to hear the information as well, because a lot of it, I think, as parents get older, they feel a little bit more out of touch with their child. Just the natural age that the kids know everything at that point, and they may not be as open to having the conversation with their parents. But I think if you presented it to a team aspect of parents and kids together, I think it would be something that a parent could feel a part of their child's decision making and education, and I think that would be looked on favorably by parents and kids both.
No, appreciate that. Yeah, I thought about that, and it's like you said, it's putting it together that people can understand it. Like you said, there's so much information. I just need to whittle it down to what's important for them at the time.
Just to add to that, Just to add to that, Brent, that's a great idea. It's something I wanted to mention. Being the last couple of years doing more scouting and being up here in Grand Prairie, where we're a little more isolated and less, we get a couple of the more elite kids that would get an advisor or reach out to an advisor. I've actually been approached for one of the programs here in town to give an advisor type presentation and I think the younger almost the better, so the parents can plan, right? I find that we're talking 15, 16, you know what? Even if they hear it for the first time, parents and kids at 10, 11, 12, what the opportunities are, what it consists of, a little bit about, the overcommitments and what the other options are, like CIS, and just so that they have all the information. Everybody, you're right. Brent made a great point that everybody wants it at their fingertips. They'll pay a little extra for it to be at their fingertips. They don't have the time to go do the research themselves, or obviously the patience and the great work that you've done with finding that information. And I think between the academies, as good a work as they do on a lot of things, the academies are at fault at not giving the information to their kids. I'm with this group here in Grand Prairie that's in the Hockey Super League. They talk about character, all that other stuff, but they're probably going to be at fault a little bit of not giving that information to their kids. There's just so many programs out there, midget AAA, bantam AAA programs out of the cities that I think just need to have that available to them. And I think that it's something that you would probably find a lot of these organizations willing to, have that, and even that update every year, right? Because they got new kids, there's new information. And I think it's something that is maybe a viable option. I'm sure you've probably thought of it many times, but as a scout talking to parents and kids and of all ages, 10, 11, 12, 15, 17, I find that a lot of them just do not have any information. Right. Like they are new and they're like, okay, I'm just going to listen to what my advisor tells me.
Correct.
Like they don't want to know the info. But if the info was there, the program that they were in had somebody come in like yourself or, they went to you when you're in Calgary, which is a great idea. Rent, almost like the city of Calgary type idea that we used to have in the AJ, that they always did a presentation once a year. I think you would have a very great following and a lot of people that would be helped by it a lot.
Appreciate that. Yeah, no, great ideas. I was going to say, maybe on one of my trips to Fort St. John, I'll drop by Grand Prairie.
Oh, anytime. Give me a call.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on your availability, though, I really think that's the key, is taking it on the road like that. It all depends, I guess. Obviously, you've got a different profession as well, so it's going to come down to your time and availability. But if you can present the information as much without bias, because I think that's the thing. Like I know a certain player agent that was around our team a lot last year and was in the coaching ranks as well. And he's got a job to do, but my suggestion would be the parents he's getting, and I'll use the term luring them in at a pretty high cost. Like when you're looking at, some parents are investing $7,000 to $9,000 in a player advisor.
What?
And for, I would suggest a large amount of the players playing midget AAA do not need an advisor for that amount of money. The top end kids will always have the opportunities, but I think the advice that could be provided to a midget AAA parent, a Bantam AAA parent, a Pee Wee AA parent, AA parents at all levels, at a lower cost, especially if it's presented as a team. So it's not, you're very open to the team concept. The team is going to approach you. And if it's kind of that unbiased approach, you're going to present all sides. It would be looked at favorably as information that is really wanted, and with a much less investment if it's a team approach. And some of the gross amounts of money that they throw around in that agent / advisor world.
And to add to that, the information that you've given us today in the 20 minutes you spoke is already a lot more. And I know you got a whole lot more. I can tell already that was just the tip of the iceberg, right? It is just a whole lot more of what they need to know in order to make a proper decision compared to what they're getting for information from the advisors that I truly do believe is usually pretty fine and focused, and sometimes even incorrect.
Right. Great feedback.
Daryl, great little session you had there. Just having all that information, the graphs, pivot tables, we live in that world in the energy business. It just paints the picture for that player, right? Cost becomes a factor. I didn't know it was that much money. I always thought a full ride was a full ride, but looking at that kind of opened up my eyes. Also, I think a big thing as well is, the education. Some hockey player is going to go into the school and they have to understand that what they take in school is not going to benefit you in life. You can go to multiple schools, but when you walk out of there, are you going to be successful later in life? Are you going to utilize it? Or did you just waste 4 years of your life and, you had fun playing hockey, but you're trying to gear yourself to the next level to get yourself in a place to be successful and grow as a human, maybe outside of hockey. Maybe someone looks at your presentation and says, actually, the hockeys might not work out, but can you help me out in universities? Maybe I'm going to go this way. Like it paints a picture so well, I find, and the data speaks for itself. So I like what you're doing, and it's great.
Nope. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. And also, degrees in the US, when you come back to Canada, are you fully qualified? Like, is that fully, because I had a friend that went to Bemidji State, what's her name, Ashley Midori? That's years ago, and she took education. She had to come back and certified U of A for a year. So now she had to incur that cost of a full year.
Yeah, there's a lot of programs that you come back with that the degree may not be as valid here. But obviously you take business, accounting, some of those programs are pretty relevant. But if you wanted to get in engineering, it's even a little more difficult, right? So it's just understanding that, right? And understanding, even if you wanted to get into a certain program, I'll just say engineering. Well, let's say Holy Cross, do they even offer it? Right. And then, so you go for 4 years and then you still got to come back and do an engineering degree. So it's just understanding all the different complexities and options and pathways to go. And I think, can't remember who made the point, but obviously being presenting the information and not making any conclusions, let the parents be able to see that information and make their own decisions.
Daryl, my name's Dean. I'm not a hockey guy, I'm a basketball guy, but I've done some my own research with the NCAA as well on the basketball side. And just a little, I'm also a statistics person myself, so I appreciated all the things that you shared there. I know for a 4-year basketball athlete playing on the basketball team as a starter, they spend 4% of their 4-year career on the court in games. 4% of their time. And so that's another, I think, a huge thing that a lot of parents don't realize. 4% is not a lot of time. We're focused on the game and we're focused on all that time, and yet your son or your daughter is going to be spending the other 96% of time living life. And so I think as that whole person approach, Daryl, I think is really key to your presentation and saying, and so just wanted to throw that out there, because I know on the basketball side, that's something that I use a lot because I see it all the time. I want to go down to the States for a D1 scholarship. And so then I can have the opportunity to have that conversation and say, that's awesome. And focus on what's it going to take to get there, but then also helping them understand that the school, life, education, all that other stuff is just as important, because that 4% is a pretty thin sliver of the pie.
Yeah, great, very valuable point. And it is a whole approach, right? And understanding it. It's not just dollars and cents. It's about the whole experience and what you're trying to achieve. Yeah, thank you very much.
Curious, Daryl, your data there, is that based upon how many credit hours in a semester is that based upon?
What are you getting at? Sorry, I'm trying to understand that question a little bit better.
Like, is that a minimum course load that they're taking, or
No,
a maximum course load?
That'd be a maximum course load, right? Because on the hockey side, they can only play for 4 years. They might get redshirted for a year, but you can only play for 4 years. So if your scholarship's only for 4 years and you have to take 5 years, you sure want to get that done in 4 years, right? At least I did when I was flipping a lot of the bill. And at the 1.35 exchange rate, that hurts.
Yeah. Guys, this has been awesome. A little bit of overtime. I think it's 8:30, 8:31 here in scenic Grand Prairie. I know that within our conversations, we're often having those discussions too around the word anxiety and struggle. And I want to encourage everybody on this call this evening that your words matter, and the conversations that you're having with your family, your friends, those that you coach, your words really matter. And I hope some things that Del shared today of innovation around skill development could really resonate within your journey. I sure look forward to listening to this call again. Daryl, I really appreciate you making time to provide the data. If anybody needs an email, send me a one-liner. I can help connect. I'm still working on the spreadsheet where that will be open for everybody. Looking forward, really excited about future Zoom calls and those that are going to be a part of it. Keith Reed's going to share in the future about his time in Humboldt. He had a chance to be a part of a Royal Bank championship, but is also going to talk about things that he learned there that's translating to the work life. And how do we win with people more? You know, how do we be a good teammate and help those people around us become better? And then in the future, my younger brother, another one of my heroes, Paul Armbruster, is going to share about, as a coach, how do we keep ourselves healthy? You know, what safeguards are we putting around us to where we're evaluating where we're at in our lives, how healthy we are, and then as we're healthy, how we can help others become healthier. So high fives to everybody. Really appreciated the discussion. I'll be sure to put this into a YouTube and send it out. Let's keep putting the best foot forward, and can't wait for the next Zoom call. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Good night, guys.
Bro.
Yeah, thank you.
you, guys.